Hi, everybody. Just a quick note. In this episode, you'll hear us talking about American Thanksgiving like it's still in the future. That's because we recorded this a couple weeks before we went to the Sound Education Conference at the beginning of November. And while we were down in Boston, we had the chance to record those two episodes with Kevin Stroud and Mark Sunderam, so we wanted to get those out first and bumped this one back in the queue. So as you're listening to this, substitute Thanksgiving for Christmas and look forward to your turkey and enjoy the show. Hello and welcome to Lexitecture, a podcast about word origins and histories. My name is Ryan, and in each episode my friend Amy and I present a new word to each other and you, delving into its past, uncovering its secrets, and discovering that even the most basic, unassuming word can offer up precious truth nuggets of wordy trivia gold. If that sounds like the show for you, it probably is, so tell your friends and come along for the ride. Today's episode... Turkey Fathom. Shall we do some words?
Shall we do some words? Yeah, absolutely.
Would you like to kick it off this time around?
Yeah, why ever not?
All right.
Okay. I am currently flicking, because that's the thing that I do with pages. What I'm actually doing is flicking through my phone. So the word that I'm going to talk about today is fathom. Fathom.
Oh, neat.
And the reason that I'm talking about Fathom is because Steve Wright in the Afternoon, which is a radio show on BBC Radio 2.
Okay.
It's an afternoon show. It runs from 2 to 5. Steve Wright is the host. He has been on the radio for pretty much as long as I've been alive. And I quite like the Steve Wright in the Afternoon show, but I really hate Steve Wright. I find him interminably annoying.
Okay.
But the rest of the show is pretty good. So it's a bit like a radio show, but it's like there's an uncle there who you kind of have to be nice to because you're related to him somehow. But sigh.
Right.
That's kind of how I feel about Steve Wright in the Afternoon. But one of the slots that they have every day is factoids, and the various presenters read out interesting facts. And I was in the car listening to the radio, as I usually am, and one of the factoids was about the word bishop, and about how the word bishop used to be... One of the original meanings for the word bishop meant an embrace.
Oh.
And I thought this was very interesting, and it also seemed to me quite a bizarre one, so I made a mental note to look that up. I think it was bishop and embrace. I'm pretty sure that was the thing. The word was definitely bishop. So anyway, when I was home and I remembered about it, I started doing a Googling to see what I could find out about this interesting etymology fact. And I couldn't find anything, not a single thing, not one scrap of information with all my Googling to support this factoid supposition. I couldn't even find it on the Steve Wright in the Afternoon website, so I began to wonder if perhaps I had not been paying attention very well and I'd misheard the fact. Anyway, while I was looking into bishop and embrace, I discovered some quite interesting things. The first thing that I discovered was that the word embrace literally means in arms, as in brachium, arm.
Oh, okay.
So brachus, Latin name for arm, and in brachium, embrace, becoming in Old French embrace, becoming in Middle English embrace, to encircle, surround or enclose. And I thought that was quite interesting because it hadn't occurred to me. And even though there's things like, there's a bundle of nerves at the top of the arm called the brachial plexus. It's where all the nerves from the arm they start in this place, they snake out from the brachial plexus.
Okay.
So it was one of these, I knew that but didn't know I knew that. Didn't know I knew. Too many news in that sense. And I found that quite interesting. When I got to Etym Online to have a look at it, I found the Etym Online entry says, mid-14th century, clasp in the arms, from Old French embrasier, clasp in the arms, enclose, covet, handle, cope with. Brass or bras, the arms, from Latin brachium, from Greek brachion, an arm. And then it said related. embraced, embracing, embraceable, replaced Old English clip-on, also, and this word is spelled with an F, then an ash, then a thorn, then an M. So it is a properly oldie Englishy word.
Yeah.
Also, fathom, fathom. So, immediately, of course, as you probably are right now, I thought, what does fathom have to do with embracing? So, I followed my link. And discovered that the Old English fathmian means to embrace, surround, or envelop. This is still on Etym Online, from a Proto-Germanic verb derived from the source of fathom. The meaning take soundings, as in at sea, is from around 1600. Its figurative sense of get to the bottom of, penetrate with the mind or understand is from the 1620s. So by this time I was interested enough in this word to want to investigate it a little bit further, thinking it might be a word I might want to talk about on a certain podcast. So of course I went to oed.com, my most favourite website in the world, where I discovered that indeed the original sense of the word fathom, the embracing arms. And this is from Old English. This is from super duper whooper Old English.
Yeah.
And Beowulf uses to fathom. I love trying to pretend that I know how to pronounce Old English.
Yeah,
and
it is
I really
fun.
don't. When I was at university and we studied Chaucer and other Middle English texts, there were two really fantastic lecturers who organised readings so that we could hear what it was supposed to sound like. And it was very good fun. So, fathom, I found this so absolutely crazy. Because my understanding of the word fathom, there is the noun in terms of it's a distance. Full fathom 5, thy father lies, as Shakespeare says in The Tempest. So, of course, all of those things are true, but it does in fact mean, well, it's a very army word. It's related to your arms, and the measurement comes from spreading your arms wide. In Old Saxon, fathmos was the two arms outstretched, which then became kind of standardised, if you like, as a measure of 6 feet. Interesting fact about that. The span of your arms is the same as your height.
I have heard that, yeah.
I love these things. I love these sort of measurements. Just like the distance from your wrist to your elbow is the length of your foot.
Yes, yeah, the proportionality.
Absolutely blows my mind.
That's
yeah,
very cool.
Fantastic. So I'm thinking, okay, so we're all about arms here. We've got the sense of encircling with the arms, hugging, embracing, but we also have the distance of reaching the arms out. You know that I'm waving my arms around as I speak. Yeah?
Oh, 100%, yeah. No, I can see that happening, even though I can't see you.
I assumed that you assumed.
Yeah, oh yeah.
So OED takes in, of course, the etymology, but also the various different meanings of the word. There are some obsolete ones that are quite interesting. So the first sense of the word, the embracing arms. In singular, from fathom, I really want you to guess what the singular of fathom in Old English was.
So the plural is the embracing arms.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
Literally,
I'll just say one arm. What one?
I would be so absolutely amazed if you were able to guess this.
Yeah, I don't imagine I'm going to amaze you. Is it just one arm length or the singular of arm?
It is in fact the stuff that comes between the arms when they are encircled. Particularly in my case, sometimes they interfere with the circling of the arms. The singular is bosom.
Oh, wait.
Yeah. As in boobies. Yeah, I hate that word almost more than any others.
Yeah.
You know, there are so many different words to describe breasts, but boobies I think is my least favourite in the entire universe.
It's not great.
So, yeah. So I looked this up on OED. The etymology here given Old English bosom, B-O-S-M, and it comes through various spellings. The word would then, like the partially synonymous fathom, primarily mean the space embraced by the two arms. So we have, once again, who knew that arms could be used to measure so many different things?
That's wild. Wow.
So the embracing arms in Old English. The second meaning given, an obsolete meaning given by the OED, is grasp, particularly as in power. In other words, to grab it with your arms.
Right, there's sort of a
Because
big
the person
bear hug and grappling
who
thing.
has their arms around something, yeah, they have the stuff, they have the power. It could also be used in the sense of the object of the embrace, the wife of thy bosom, or as is given here from 1602, bride, she that is now thy fathom. So the thing, the person that you embrace with your arms.
Oh, okay.
And then we have sense 2, the making a line with the arms to measure a distance. So, fathom it 3 times round, using the arms to measure.
Right.
And the sort of the written examples of this, we have 1519, 1607, 1646, 1786. So interesting that although this is a really, really old word, it is kind of shifting a little bit as the centuries go on. We have then breadth of comprehension, grasp of intellect, ability. Shakespeare in around 1616 saying, another of his fathom they have not. So nobody else who understands it the way that they do.
Right.
And again, this notion of being able to wrap your arms around something, equating with knowledge, I found really, really pleasing.
That's a neat jump there. That's neat.
Yeah, we then have number 3, that measure of length, which is given here as the length of the forearm. So that foot length, again, another obsolete one. It's used in this sense in around about 1000. The sense of fathom between... Oh, this is so beautiful. Fathom betwixt elbow gan and hand wriste. Oh,
fantastic.
I'll be over here getting my Middle English on if you need me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so there are lots of... There's another circa 1000 reference here from Elfric. Then, so the arms... And it makes sense. Who standardises measurements when there isn't really a government body who's doing that? And I know that standardisation of measurements goes back to the Egyptians and beyond, but everyone has arms. Most people have arms. So to be able to say it's about this long, that's a pretty ingenious way of doing that.
Yeah, just to ballpark it.
We then have the length covered by the outstretched arms, including the hands to the tip of the longest finger, hence a definite measure of 6 feet. If you happen to be a 6 foot tall person.
If you happen to be 6 feet tall, yeah.
Yeah, the references here even earlier, around about 800. Passus fathom ul tugen stridai. Man, I need to actually learn about this stuff. His tail was 5 fathom long, that kind of thing. Right. So, yeah, we get this. We then have fathoms deep, fathoms down.
Yep.
Within the fathoms of his conscience. So not just the physical sense of you have sunk down this distance, but also you have dropped in my estimation. And used in mining, used in a lot of these other usages. So a way to measure wood, the depth of a mine, all these different things.
Mm-hmm.
When we get into compounds, there are tons. We have a fathom lot, fathom deep, fathom fish, fathom hell, fathom line. So many. A lot of them are obsolete or very, very specific usages within things like mining and timbers and timberwork and the sea and things like that. So, yeah, it seemed like a very... I know what this word means. I'm pretty sure I could guess at where it comes from kind of word. And in fact, fathom has taken me on a journey far, far greater than I could ever wrap my arms around.
That's awesome. It always reminds me of one of the greatest movies of all time, Hook.
I love Hook.
And Mr. Smee is acting as hype man for Captain Hook, and he's telling jokes to the crew before he introduces the captain. And the joke that falls flat is, a man so deep he's almost unfathomable.
Oh,
and all the pirates look up with this blank expression. And then he reads the room and adjusts his joke and follows it up with a man so quick he's even fast asleep, which is one of my favorite little singers of all time. Yeah, that's very cool. I like how the origins of measurements in so many different ways before they were standardized are just something simple and relatable, like
Yeah.
roughly the size, like roughly the length of your arm, roughly this, roughly that. It's kind of a cool way to, and it's a very practical. You can totally see why people would have done it. I think it's really interesting that the analogy or the analogizing between the original, like the plural, and the singular being the thing that you're embracing. Like that's a very
Yeah.
not counterintuitive, but unintuitive from, I guess, from a 20th, 21st century person's standpoint, that would be a relationship that you would define with the same word, but in a different, I mean, I guess you embrace the embraced, but just to go from plural to singular, it's an
It's
unexpected twist.
I feel like it's one of these could have been moments where, we've talked about words in the past where little quirks like that have spun the word off into a completely different etymological direction. And
Yeah.
while that didn't happen in this particular case, I think it's quite easy to see how it could have.
Yeah, exactly. So fathom.
And it's always really interesting to consider what word might we have been using if any one of the millions of quite often incidental, lucky, quirky things that happens to make a word pass into common usage happens,
Mm-hmm.
So we could have been, fathoming and embracing and, yeah.
That unfathomable could mean unlovable.
Yeah.
If it had gone the other way.
Rather than unknowable.
Yeah. That's really interesting. One other thing that came up way back at the beginning when you were talking about the little factoids on that show.
Yeah.
Factoid has been ruined for me. The word factoid.
Are you about to ruin it for me too?
I probably am, yeah. And I suspect maybe for a lot of people. And you can all blame my friend John for this, because it's his fault. So I used the word factoid once on a incidental and probably completely superfluous Facebook post at some point. And John pointed this out to me, in that the relationship between factoid and a word like android, and what factoid really means, if you break it down, is something that is like a fact but isn't. Because an android is an artificial being that is like a man, a human, but isn't.
Yeah.
And so from that point on, I kind of went, crap. That means if I call something a factoid, I'm basically just calling it an alternative fact. Because it's not actually a fact if it's a factoid, it's a pretend fact. So I've adopted and adapted. I've tried to be flexible in my language usage, so I now use truth nugget or chunk of trivia.
Now, I have not had the word factoid ruined for me at all, because I didn't get there via examination of the word android, but I was aware that a factoid is not necessarily quite as factual as a fact is. And so I would tend to use it when, in fact, quite usefully in this case, because I feel like I don't know if I remember it correctly, but the Steve Wright factoids, if I was going to pass that on to someone, for example, I would say interesting factoid, meaning I heard this but I'm not sure if it's I heard this but don't take me to court about it.
Yeah, unconfirmed at this point.
Yeah, and those things are so fantastic. When I was but young, I worked as a barmaid, and I think I started working as a barmaid just before I was 20, and it was kind of, the internet was happening and it was becoming more common, and the pub that I worked in was largely populated by sort of older men, some women, but mainly men. It was quite a traditional sort of Scottish pub.
Right.
And these were guys who there was a particular group of guys they'd come in at opening times, they would put some money into a kitty for horse racing, and one or the other of them would run next door to the bookies, and they would bet on horses all day and have a few drinks and talk about whatever they fancied talking about. And some of them were a pain in the backside, and some of them were truly wonderful human beings.
Right.
And an awful lot of that chat was factoid based. It was the sort of thing whereby these days you'd go, I wonder what such and such, and within 10 seconds someone will have Googled it.
Right.
And it's this whole, this slightly curmudgeonly, the internet is ruining our brains kind of thing, which I don't believe in the slightest.
No.
However, I do think sometimes it's a bit like my siblings like to play a game. We were together on Friday and we were playing this game. TV's on in the background. We were just, hanging out. They were having a few drinks and Jules Holland was on. That was what it was. I don't know if you're aware of Later with Jules Holland.
Nope.
It's a really well established music programme on, I think it's on BBC. And the great thing about Jules Holland, so Jules Holland was in the little known British band Squeeze. Not that little known, but he's an absolutely remarkable pianist. And he runs this show where he showcases musical acts. And the great thing about it is you will find like global arena filling awesome legendary artists playing alongside this up and coming act from Bristol who is beginning to be a little bit of a success, so within the episode that was on there was I think my brother had recorded it and he just had it on for sort of some background music, but Soft Cell played Tainted Love.
Yeah.
And then this guy came on with a guitar and written all over his face and his body language was, holy shit, I'm on Jules Holland. Oh my God. And it was just, it was just wonderful. And sometimes they have a chat and they talk about albums and forthcoming stuff. And sometimes the bands just play and then we don't really hear anything else about them. And Jules Holland might play along with them, or a few of the artists might get together for the end of the show and they'll play something all together. But it's quite sort of loose and informal. Anyway, as we're watching this, my sister loves to play this game. How old do you think they are? So everyone in the room takes a guess. Oh no! I wouldn't say they're that old. No, because remember. So one of them was Gwen Stefani. She wasn't on Jules Holland. This must have been later when the videos had shifted. How old is Gwen Stefani?
Oh, Gwen Stefani's. I'm gonna say 47.
So this, of course, sparks off a great debate about 47. There's no way she's 47. Look at her; she looks fantastic.
Right. Yeah.
All this stuff. So we have this chat, and then eventually the result of it is somebody Googles Gwen Stefani, and finds out when was she born, and you either go, oh my God, that's really surprising, I didn't know how old she was, or you go, yes, that was right. Okay, so pretty simple game, but that's the sort of thing that would happen in the pub. That's the sort of chat that would go on. And factoids were there in abundance. And the whole stereotype of a guy in the pub told me.
Yeah.
Which I think these days is, it's an absolute laughable measurement of truth. But you can, they may not be very factual and correct, but you also hear quite a lot of interesting things from guys in the pub. So, factoid.
Neat.
As a little addenda to... addendum. I've forgotten which one's which.
Addendum would be singular.
Thank you. Do you ever get confused about those things?
Occasionally, yeah.
Yeah. My husband was saying, he's a maths teacher, and he was saying there's a textbook at his work where the text in this question completely messes up the singular plural arrangements of die and dice.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
To the extent that he was unable to remember which was which in order to tell me how they'd gotten it wrong.
Oh, right, yeah, because it's like...
Yeah, you know
by
what I mean?
the time you get so turned around, the wires get crossed, and then it's hard to untangle them before you talk about it.
Yeah. Gwen Stefani, incidentally, was born in 1969.
Yeah, I just looked it up too. She's 49. Welcome to the time when you don't need to not know things.
Yeah, it's true.
Unlike at the time when Gwen Stefani achieved fame in the mid-90s, where you would all the time have to have a conversation with someone and go, well, we just don't know. I guess we'll die this way.
But then, there are so many things on the internet that I wish we didn't know. Like NASA's internet.
Oh, yeah.
I'm still quite peeved about that.
Like what?
So, Ryan and I had a conversation this week about the internet. I was looking to not pay so much money for my broadband. And in the middle of this, I was asking him how fast is broadband in Canada. And the answer is where Ryan lives, much, much slower than it is in the UK.
Oh, yes.
However, NASA NASA's internet was something like 13,000 times faster than the average home.
There's like 91,000 megabits per second, which is
Yeah, yeah. Greedy!
I mean, they have to fly rockets with it, so I guess it's okay.
Yeah. Do they really need all of that to fly rockets?
I doubt it. They could give me some. They won't, but they could.
They won't, alas. Never mind.
Cool. So,
what have you got?
I have, because, okay, so Canadian Thanksgiving is coming up right around the corner as we record.
Okay.
And by the time this episode comes out, American Thanksgiving will be looming large on the horizon. So I have chosen the word turkey.
Ooh.
And so turkey, the large, ugly, stupid, somewhat tasty, but definitely ubiquitous type of fowl.
You're so turkeyist.
I am. I've never been a huge fan of turkey. I enjoy a turkey dinner, but I realized not that long ago that on a list of my favorite things about a turkey dinner, the turkey is surprisingly low on the list.
People often talk about that here. You know, traditionally we have turkey at Christmas, and lots of people discuss the fact that turkey is the most overrated food in the universe.
Yeah, like the
and
stuffing
the only
is
reason
great,
we eat it,
gravy.
the only reason we
potatoes.
eat it at Christmas is because it's traditional to do so.
Yeah, it's sort of true. And it's also weird because, so the word turkey doesn't make any sense.
Oh, excellent.
Because it's a bird that it's native to North America.
Mm-hmm.
It's not found anywhere else. The species is just from North America. So why is it called turkey? Because turkey is not in North America. So the origins of the word turkey are just a big cluster of colonial ignorance.
Oh no, is
sort
this going
of.
to get really racist and violent?
Not violent.
Only for the turkeys.
turkey. Yeah, exactly. Other
Okay.
than the turkeys.
I'm pretty sure I recall a slot on QI about this,
They may have done. There's every sort of
but I
couple of
don't
years.
I
they
don't
come up
recall what was the deal with turkeys. So
Yeah.
I'm very, very curious to hear.
So originally, way back in the pre-Columbian era, in Europe, there was still a word for there was a bird that was referred to as turkey, and that turkey was a type of guinea fowl that was native to Northwest Africa, specifically sort of Madagascar, or not Northwest Africa. Sorry, it was an African turkey fowl, guinea fowl that was called turkey, and the way it arrived in Europe was through merchants that had used Constantinople as their hub.
Istanbul,
trading
not
hub.
Constantinople.
That's right.
Istanbul, not Constantinople. Thanks for that. That's in my head for at least 3 days now.
Nobody's business but the Turks. And so because this bird, this guinea fowl, arrived in Western Europe and Northwestern Europe via Turkey and Turkish merchants, it was called a turkey cock. And
So the bird that isn't a turkey.
so this
went
isn't the
through
turkey now.
Turkey.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is all groundwork so far still. So we've already got one bird that's called turkey that's not from Turkey, but it's called turkey because it was sold by Turkish people, and people are generally lazy when naming things, especially
Yeah, that is true.
especially the British. And this is
Oh God, yeah.
yeah, right. So this was a turkey. Then they quote unquote discovered the quote unquote New World. In that they arrived at a place where people had lived for many, many thousands of years and asked, "Do you have a flag?"
I was
And put a
just
flag
thinking
down.
of "Do you have a flag?"
And said, "It's a new place." Excuse me. No, it's a new place. You people be quiet. So when they got to
How
this,
tiresome must the colonists have been?
oh, just so.
I mean, obviously they were violent and murderous and you know did unspeakable, terrible, horrible things. But as well as that, they must have been dicks.
just annoying. Yeah.
Just annoying.
Like,
We've
it's
discovered
just-
this place. Sorry, what? Who? What? What are you talking about? Get back
Guys-
on your boat and
Guys are
shut up.
standing on our cities. No, it's an empty, vast, open plain.
Do you know what we're going to do? We're going to sell this place. Whoa, 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 whoa. Wait a minute.
That's right. So there are two kind of competing theories, and I'm getting the specific arrangement of these two theories. They're quite widely talked about. You can find them in Edom online. You can find them in the OAD when you look up the origins of turkeys.
Sure.
This formulation of these two theories comes from an NPR interview with a Romance languages professor at Columbia University named Mario Pei, I believe his name is. And so this is where I found this particular kind of formulation. One is that, and this is the two theories on how the name turkey for the bird got co-opted by a different bird that wasn't from Turkey.
A little bit like how the country got co-opted by a set of dicks who weren't from that country.
Exactly.
Okay,
so
continue.
The first one is that the British people who popularized this bird as a ceremonial and traditional dish basically said, it's a bit like turkey. It's probably the same bird. We'll just call it turkey.
Sure.
And the other one, and there's no reason that these can't both be true. These aren't mutually exclusive theories. The second one is that the bird was first brought to Europe by the Spanish conquistadors. So the first stop was Spain, and because of sort of the influence of the Moorish Empire and the metaphorical bridge between Morocco and Spain, there was a lot of trade that happened south from Spain across North Africa. And so the bird arrived in Spain through the conquistadors, and then it spread first to North Africa, and then around the Mediterranean, and then back up to France and Germany and Britain.
Who probably pretended that they discovered it.
And so in those cases, it would have still come from Turkish merchants.
Okay.
And so that was where that kind of turkey connection came from in both cases, whether it was just simply co-opting from the bird itself and it came elsewhere, or it was another case of, here's a bird, the dude selling it to me is Turkish, therefore this bird must be from Turkey, because how would they get anything from anywhere else? We'll call it turkey.
When you say that the first theory says that people thought this is a bit like turkey, perhaps you don't know the answer, do you mean in terms of tastes alike or looks alike?
I don't think they look much alike.
Well, so this is what I'm wondering, because all I really know about guinea fowl is that they're little and turkeys tend to be quite large.
Yeah, the guinea fowl were a much smaller bird as I understand it, so I don't think it was necessarily that they were larger or small, or that the living size of them was not necessarily at issue, although I might be wrong. I don't know for sure, but
I'm wondering if it might in fact be more appropriate to use the sort of truism that it tastes a bit like chicken. It may actually be better to say it tastes a bit like turkey.
I mean, exactly, that might be it, and then they just said, well, this must be turkey as well. I'm not really sure, but what they did have a habit of, just because Constantinople is obviously such a vital trading port for centuries, there were a lot of different things that were called turkey. So
sure.
Carpet bags from Hungary were often transported by Turkish merchants on their way through, so they were called turkey bags. Indian flour was called turkey flour. Persian rugs were called turkey rugs.
This is very interesting. I was wondering as you were saying this, did the Turkish merchants only have birds? Because if the merchants were ubiquitous enough for people to give the name turkey to the bird, the Turks must be a merchanty sort of people. But in fact, people are so lazy that in fact many things became turkey things.
Yeah, exactly. If it was a Turkish person selling it, it was a turkey. It became a turkey thing.
If turkey was a brand, it would be absolutely kicking ass here.
It's true. It's like it was probably the first version. There's a word for it. Brand genericization. I think maybe.
Geronym. Yeah,
where
like
it's like
Hoover,
Kleenex, Hoover, yes. Dyson, like those type of things.
Sorry, not a generonym.
Generonym? Is that what?
Yes,
yeah, that
I believe
makes sense.
That's what they're called.
This was probably the first of those.
That's cool.
Just everything became turkey. Interestingly, it's not just in English that this bird is misnamed based on a geographical screw-up.
What?
Because when you think of the French word for turkey, which is dinde or dindon, D-I-N-D-E or D-I-N-D-O-N, That that is a shortening of poulet d'Inde, or chicken from
Chicken of India.
India. And
Wow.
so it's called a dinde or dindon because it was the chicken, Indian chicken from India, because of this bizarre and steadfast, stubborn misconception that it came from India because they thought North America was India, which is why
Hence
we
the
have
the,
we
the
call First Nations and Aboriginal peoples in North America were called Indians for
yeah.
forever. Why, to this day, for some reason, the West Indies, or the
Oh, of
Caribbean
course.
islands, West Indian islands, right? Like it's all from that. And then in Turkish, apparently, now I'm taking this on faith from what I read through Edom Online and a couple other sources, is, because I don't know any Turkish at all, but in Turkish, that bird is called Hindi, literally Indian. So they don't call turkeys turkey in Turkey.
That's amazing.
In Turkey, they call turkeys Indian, which is probably from the French, messed up, where they called them the chicken of India because they thought North America, where they're from, was from India, despite the fact that everyone else thought they were from Turkey and called them turkeys.
This is the most ridiculous etymology I've ever heard. It's
It's
brilliant.
it's so dumb that it can only be about a turkey, one of the dumbest birds imaginable. And
This
that,
is so great.
yeah, so that's so when you are sitting down for your, if you're in North America, Thanksgiving feast, if you're in Britain or elsewhere where they don't do turkey on Thanksgiving, they only do it for Christmas. When you're sitting down for your next turkey dinner spread, the turkey may be the most culinarily uninteresting thing on the plate and on the table, but at least you now know a good story about it.
That is awesome, Ryan. Wow.
Yeah.
Love it.
So, turkey.
Turkey. That's
Or,
so funny.
yeah.
In Turkey, they don't call turkey.
Yeah, they call it India. because why not?
It's not quite as cool as the Reservoir Dogs Royale with cheese, but it's amusing me a great deal more.
Yeah, nobody write in. It's from Pulp Fiction, we know. It was a slip of the tongue.
Oh, so of
I
course.
don't want to hear it.
Thank you. I didn't even notice I'd made the mistake. Nobody write in. I don't know. Remember Dear Idiots?
I'm still waiting
I still
for
don't
that.
think we've had a Dear Idiots.
No, we
left.
haven't. Everyone's been ridiculously pleasant, which is great. Keep it up. Thank you.
It is. It's see, people who like words are good people.
Generally speaking, I think that's probably true. Although,
Of course, there are exceptions.
now
Yes,
that we've said that.
of course.
Yeah, so there's fathomable turkeys.
Fathom and Turkey. I'm still. It's like the story that you told me is still kind of hanging around in the air, and I'm looking at the pictures, still trying to entirely wrap my head around the craziness of it all.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts.
So tell me about Canadian Thanksgiving, because I don't actually know a great deal about either American or Canadian Thanksgiving. Who was giving thanks and why? Because
Okay.
if it was the First Nations people, oh man, this is an embarrassing story.
No, they don't have an awful lot to give thanks for. The especially to do with this, there's much less of a colonial tinge to it in Canada than there is
Is that not generally the case?
in the United States. Which, yeah, it tends. Well, although we're not awesome about a lot
Well,
of
I
stuff
mean,
to do with the Aboriginals and First Nations
Let's
either.
face it,
But
anything colonial, you know, you can talk about the great benefits of colonialism and as much as you like, and you know, it was a time in history that happened, but let's face it, nothing was ever colonized in a way that we would these days recognize as honest, fair, right,
yeah,
humanitarian,
remotely acceptable.
correct. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's true. We don't have, so in the States, the American Thanksgiving has a lot of the narrative about the Pilgrims, and it's this mythology of them giving thanks with the native population who, quote unquote, welcomed them to their lands, and there's a lot of the Pilgrims and the people with belt buckle hats on sharing corn and turkeys with
I'm so glad that
the
you know
natives.
what level I need to understand this at, Ryan.
Yeah.
Your pitching is entirely accurate.
Yeah. Canadian Thanksgiving tends to not have as much of a story behind it. It's sort of, I mean, I feel like there's, like in Korea they had Chuseok, which is sort of the equivalent, right? It's kind of just the fall harvest festival,
Right.
and
Okay.
lots of places have it. It's just born out of the tradition where this is where all the stuff was gonna die, so we might as well cook it and eat
Yeah,
it.
tale as old as time, really. You know, what culture doesn't have some form of harvest festival in there somewhere?
Yeah, exactly. And so Canadian Thanksgiving tends to be a more generic. We get a day off. It's the
Yay!
harvest festival, but it's not at all commemorative of any one event,
Right. Okay.
real or mythic, as it sort of tends to be framed as in the States.
Let's face it, most people would accept a day off work for, like, you know, First Church Satanists.
Yeah, no, it's like
National Wear Your Socks Inside Out Day.
yeah.
You,
We'll
you know,
give us.
people don't really care as long as there's a day off in it.
Do I get a paid holiday? Yes, perfect.
Awesome.
I'm in. Yeah.
Yeah, there was great. There was much petting of lips in the UK when the second royal wedding that had happened within sort of 5 or 6 years wasn't a public holiday.
Oh,
We weren't
okay.
pleased. Yeah, we wanted that public holiday, damn it.
all the staunch Republicans are still just a little upset they didn't get the day off work for the royal wedding.
Well, you know, it's hilarious because things like, I remember being like in the centre of Dundee in like a shopping centre, and one of the clothing shops had a special royal wedding sale, and it's really, really hard to overestimate how much we in Scotland generally as a population do not give a shit about things like royal weddings. You know,
Yeah.
it's like we negative care about
Yeah.
such things.
Yeah.
So I was my reaction was basically, well, good for you for trying, and I'm sure
Right.
people will still enjoy the sale. However, calling it a royal wedding sale, no one is flocking to the, you know, no one is running through your doors because it's a royal wedding sale.
Yeah. Read the room, you know?
Here is a question that I am interested in, and probably I could Google it, but I prefer to just speculate and ask other people
Right.
in the manner of old men in the pub.
Yeah.
I wonder, what is the most bizarre reason for an official public holiday globally?
Oh, that would be interesting.
Yeah, I feel like it's actually it's odd that we're talking about public holidays, because I was looking up public holidays in Australia this morning. There's a reason. I wasn't just generally looking it up. Because today's my husband's birthday.
Oh, happy birthday,
And-
Ross.
Yeah, happy birthday, Ross. And he is at work because the school, we do have a holiday in October in Scottish schools, but it starts tomorrow.
Oh, of course.
And what's particularly annoying for Ross is that the October holiday in Dundee used to be the sort of this week and next week.
Oh.
And at some point, Dundee City Council decided that they were going to change that and make it next week and the following week.
Right.
This is further complicated by the fact that nearby city councils aren't, you know, the holidays don't happen all in the same time. So, for example, my sister works in Dundee City Council as a teacher, so she gets the school holidays. However, her two sons go to school in Angus, which is just, you know, a few streets over, if you want to call it that. I suppose
Yeah.
every border is a few streets over from somewhere. But, so they're on holiday this week, and she isn't.
Oh.
So yeah, it becomes a bit of an administrative pain in the neck. Anyway, I had heard a factoid that in Australia you're entitled to a day off for your birthday.
That would be awesome. Is that did
So
you find out if that's true?
Well, I looked it up and eventually ended up looking at a list of Australian public holidays. It isn't true, however, it's not uncommon within large Australian businesses for them to offer this as like an incentive to staff.
That's like a
So
perk,
there are-
just like yeah, okay.
There are employers and corporations who will say, as well as your yearly entitlement to leave, whatever that might be, you also get a day off for your birthday.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty cool.
I would have thought in Australia they'd give you the day after your birthday off, but
Well, this
just
is
out of sympathy. Although maybe they just figure you'll call in sick. See how it goes.
Yeah. What's the etiquette for calling in sick, though, when you do that? I mean, because if you're going to call in sick, you don't want to do it just for a day because that seems spurious. So, in fact, I'm thinking of I'm sure I saw a Daily Mash article recently where a man called in sick for the third day for veracity.
Just to keep up appearances.
Yeah, exactly.
There we go. That's it for another episode of Lexitecture. If you like what you've heard, please spread the words. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook by searching Lexitecture, Lexitecture, and find us on our website at lexitecture.com. We also love hearing from you, so if you've got a word you'd like us to look into, a tasty bit of trivia to share, or anything else you'd like to tell us, drop us a line at words@lexitecture.com. Talk to you next time. Bye.